Hello, my name is Ryan McGechaen, and I'm a game designer with over 18 years of experience, and welcome to my post-mortem on the Company of Heroes 2 mission, Panzer Hunting. In this video, we'll be going over the various aspects of the mission, including an overview, historical and gameplay inspiration, each of the beats for the mission, and then a brief look at what went well and what could have been improved. Company of Heroes 2 was the sequel to the award-winning Company of Heroes RTS game and was released in 2013. My role in the project was a mission designer in charge of the missions Stalingrad Railway, Support is on the Way, Panzer Hunting, and the Reichstag. The game was developed entirely on the in-house Essence Engine 3.0 with various middleware solutions. Development time for Panzer Hunting was approximately 6 months from concept to filing. Panzer Hunting takes place around the halfway mark in the campaign. In it, players are tasked with securing a small village with a limited force. Upon arriving, however, they discover the village is not quite as abandoned as they thought, and a German Tiger tank wipes out the player's tanks quickly. The player must now attempt to defeat the Tiger with limited resources available. Historically speaking, Panzer Hunting is not based on an actual event. It was inspired by stories of Allied forces disabling and capturing German armor throughout the war. The most famous of these incidents was Tiger 131, which was captured by the British forces in Africa in 1943. Gameplay-wise, the target I set out for this mission was horror. Horror as a theme doesn't generally exist in RTSs beyond some horrific elements, such as the concept of undead or demons. I wanted Panzer Hunting to instead throw back to some of the older survival horror games of the 90s, and so a lot of those design elements were incorporated into the mission. Cat and mouse was a term I used a lot when describing the initial beat of the mission. It proved valuable as it was something everyone could understand and latch onto. Although methods changed from project to project at Relic, the general design process for a mission was as follows. First, a map sketch and high-level mission beats were drawn up on what we called a one-pager. This was a simple, quick overview of the mission without going into too much details in order to give us a chance to quickly look at the campaign as a whole. This process involves all support teams as well, including narrative, art, audio, animation, etc. Involving these teams from early on gets their feedback and buy-in, ultimately leading to a stronger mission. Once the mission has been given the OK by the lead, Greybox development begins. This included placeholder art, audio, as well as any designer-created gameplay elements to hold up the mission until proper support can be rendered. The mission then enters a standard playtest and iteration cycle, including bug fixing, polishing, and any final elements being implemented. To facilitate my goal of horror, I incorporated a few design tricks of older games into the map. First off, time of day was a no-brainer. While horror can occur at any time, nighttime is always the gold standard. The map's western village and eastern industrial areas were designed to be tight corridors, taking advantage of COH2's True Sight line of sight system. I also incorporated the game's new Deep Snow system, which slows down infantry but does not affect tracked vehicles, to capture the nightmare feeling of trying to run but being unable to. Most everything in COH is already destructible, but we place lots of items that could be blown apart by tiger shells or run over. Halfway through the mission, the Tiger runs to the north where we have a large, open airfield that starts to ease the player out of the horror mindset and into a more standard mission in preparation for the second phase of the map. Normally, intros for COH missions set up gameplay and objectives, but in Panzer Hunting's case, this is intentionally kept light. Instead, the intro sets mood and tone. It creates a sense of unease as well as a sense of full strength with the AI tank units. Another key aspect of horror is that if you keep dread steady, players eventually become numb to it. A key element used to break this up is typically humor, so we throw some of that in there in the form of the back and forth banter between the tankers. This helps to put the player at ease before suddenly the tank breaks out and destroys the AI tanks. So the stakes are now set. The player knows their objective and what tools they have available. COH gameplay is built around hard counters to support the realism of World War II. You can shoot a rifle at a tank, but you won't damage it. Most of the anti-tank weapons the player starts with are meant to counter smaller, lighter tanks. They would eventually destroy the Tiger, but it will take time and expose the squads to heavy fire. I wanted to give the player some options with how to tackle the challenge, and during playtesting we discovered three primary ways players dealt with the Tiger. Some players would select their conscripts with their PTRS AT rifles and charge the tank, using line of sight and cover to whittle down the tank. Some players set out into the village to secure munitions and discover abandoned AT guns, then position them and ambush the Tiger as it moved around the village. Other players, and these were my personal favorites, planted mines and demolition packs and then lured the Tiger across them. Even in such a constrained box, we gave the player freedom of choice, which greatly increases the depth of this beat. I wanted to take a moment to talk about the Tiger AI. At the start of development, the AI in COH2 was very rudimentary. It was still in its infancy, and so in order to deliver on the promise, I had to take things into my own hands. I wanted the Tiger to move around the village when not in combat, and when engaging, would pursue the player until line of sight was lost. This meant that if you were taking fire, you could run your squads around a building and the Tiger would look for you, but eventually give up and return to patrol. This was all hand-scripted in Lua at first, but eventually our AI team was able to provide the proper framework for the Tiger. Eventually, the Tiger takes enough damage that it retreats to the airfield to the north. Players pursue, and the mission progresses similarly to the first beat, but with a few notable differences. For one, the arena has changed. The airfield is far more open than the village. This means the player's tactics will need to change a bit in dealing with the Tiger. Secondly, the Tiger is a bit more aggressive. Once engaged, it doesn't give up as easily. This means the player needs to be ready to commit to an attack once they begin. Eventually, the player defeats the Tiger, except it doesn't explode, the crew inside dies. This moves to the second beat of the mission and transitions us to a more traditional RTS experience, a wave defense. The player needs to repair the Tiger and extract it to the south of the map while holding off as Germans attempt to destroy it to prevent its capture. To help with this, the player is granted a base at the exfiltration point, and some new squads are delivered to the airfield. Once the Tiger is repaired, it's time to escape. I also give the player a choice as to when they want to leave. The Tiger is mobile at around 75% health, but in order to extract it, it needs to be driven through the village, which has now been fortified by the Germans. Again, we give the player some freedom with how they want to tackle this. They can build up forces at their base and clear the village, making the extraction fairly relaxed, but still must defend the Tiger as it will continue to be under attack. They can take the Tiger at 75% health and drive it down, risking it being destroyed. They can repair it fully, giving a little bit more of a chance as well as enabling the main gun. Or they can flank around the village. This takes much longer, but encounters fewer enemies. The mission had a lot of challenges through development. We needed a lot of support that was not available due to the state of the project at that point. AI was almost non-existent, so it had to be hand-scripted and remained that way for the majority of development. Core gameplay was still changing rapidly, so the mission was constantly being retuned to accommodate. These issues were mostly on me, however. The mission was overscoped, and the idea of a survival horror game in an RTS was a challenge. A lot of special tricks were needed to get this one across the finish line. Time was another big factor here. I had 4 missions, 2 of which were the first and last missions of the campaign, which took up most of my time. This meant Panzer Hunting didn't get the attention I wanted to give it. The mission has a lot of bugs even now with the first beat. Sometimes the Tiger spawns with engine problems, sometimes it can get immobilized during the retreat to the airfield, and since the Tiger is invulnerable during that period, the game soft locks. Lastly, I always felt the second half of the mission felt a bit tacked on. Compared to the unique gameplay of the hunt, the extraction just sort of felt like it was there because we needed to give the player vanilla RTS. Looking back, I probably would have just built the mission fully around the hunt portion and expanded it. Despite all that, the mission turned out to be a success. Thanks to the close interaction with support teams, while they weren't able to help early on, once the systems like AI came online, we were able to easily swap out the design hacks with some tweaking and get the mission running properly. AI really knocked it out of the park here. The Tiger during the hunt sequence was a one-off. No other part of the game uses that, yet they managed to pretty much copy exactly what I had prototyped in Scar. Lastly, feedback sessions were always positive. Everyone on the team just seemed to like to play the mission. Even after hours and hours of working on it, I always had fun when I had to go back in and fix a bug or rebalance munition placements, and I think that says something. I don't think we celebrate our wins in this industry as much as we should. I will not hesitate to praise my peers at their hard work and dedication, but I have a hard time accepting it myself. That said, when the reviews started to roll in and I saw my mission being called out by a number of them as a highlight of the campaign, I felt pride. I was proud of what I had built, and I could not have done it without such a fantastic team backing me every step of the way. I think if 16-year-old Ryan saw IGN call something he made inspired, he would have lost his shit. I've made a lot of games since this mission. I've built campaigns, armies, and progression systems. I've mentored, managed, and I've grown as a designer and continue to grow. But Panzer Hunting will, to me, always stand out as one of my best works. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to see more of my work, please check out my portfolio, ryanmcgechaen.com. There will be a link below.